Okay, so welcome today. So I'm going to be presenting the 2016 Tigerspike predictions on technology. It's something that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. We get insights from all of our 8 offices around the world, and we pull together themes that we think will be important for businesses. So we have 7. And the first one is businesses starting to adopt a startup mentality. So we have a new employee, and these employees are digital natives. One of our London guys has even coined the term screenagers. So these screenagers are in new types of businesses, and they're really shaking the way that we think and work. And it's a new world, and people are using new technologies within this new world. So, for example, there are these unicorn-type companies that 1 to 2 years are now worth $1 billion, and there are individuals now that are using Uber, for example, to go to meetings rather than just take normal taxis. And they're using applications like Slack for messaging and communication. And then within a broader kind of hosting, businesses are now widely using cloud-hosted services, so using things like AWS. So there's been a real sort of change in how companies are operating, and companies have to adapt to that. And it's accelerating. Why is it accelerating? Because there's a bigger pipe, so there's more connected devices, there are faster networks, and more people are collaborating differently using social media. So the acceleration of change is very fast. And for businesses and old corporate companies, that change can be quite difficult. Now, we are seeing in the market businesses trying to innovate. So on the top right here, we have Westfield. So they introduced a concept called Westfield Labs a number of years ago. So Tigerspike are working with them to look at new kind of innovative digital products. On the left is Telstra, who opened up an exchange in Melbourne. Bottom right are research institutions or publications that are trying to start to think about innovation and are trying to create accelerators. And the bottom right is Westpac. So Westpac, not just creating their own innovation labs, but they're actually starting to set up accelerators. So they've started investing in fintech. And so this is one example, Prosper. So starting trying to accelerate new technologies. That isn't easy. So conventional wisdom is one of the biggest killers of innovation. So it's very hard for companies, and very hard for companies to be successful in this area. So we have 5 recommended steps in terms of thinking about how to bring up more of a startup mentality within your business. The first one is recognizing the reptile. So companies are actually inherently like a reptile. So they're quite resistant to change. And you actually have to be quite patient with it. So this really speaks to the change management piece. So you have to really think about, if you create a whole new kind of innovative environment, you have to work through the change management process of getting that introduced into your normal way of working. Step 2 is you need to assemble your heroes. So this is that the individuals have to have certain traits. They have to be tenacious. They need to be able to work within that business. And also they need to be cross-functional. So this might be cross-functional in that it's a small multidiscipline teams with different skill sets, different experiences, or it might be a single individual that has a number of strings to their bow. But these individuals are very, very important if you want to bring this mentality into your company. Step 3, you have to set the stage. So you have to allow businesses to accelerate. You need to make sure that design thinking is imperative and is front of mind with anything and everything that you're doing. And you need to introduce a culture. You need to introduce a culture to allow these project teams to work fast. And that culture might mean that you have to separate out or create even a new office environment, because you might actually have an office environment that's not, doesn't allow that open way of working. You need to ship it quick. So there's a concept around is now not just about building out a minimal viable product, but actually a minimal lovable product. So if you can create a minimal lovable product, then you're more likely to get engagement within your own internal workforce. And then there's a concept around automation. So here's an example with Amazon. So they've done a number of things around automation. And so automation ultimately is that move from human to machine to help you speed up ways of working. So from a development standpoint, they've done a number of things internally to help automate a number of their processes, and they're actually able now to ship code every 11.6 seconds. So they can really ship. So they ship to production every 11.6 seconds. Now that took them a long while to get there. So there's a number of processes to get there, but now they actually have a framework that allows them to move very quickly. Another analogy with Amazon is they have a distribution center in Texas where they distribute products when they're bought. And they've gone through a number of processes to go from human to machine. So the first one was when you were going around the delivery center, so they had guys that would go around and pick out products. They were having a number of quality assurance issues. So, for example, an individual would go to say a cables section, and there'll be 50 different cables. And more often than not, they would actually pick out the wrong cable. So they're having a lot of human error. So what they did was they started to look at data. And they start to analyze their data to see, okay, if someone buys a network cable, maybe they're buying other similar products. And they started to kind of introduce a concept of a bundle of products. And then what they did was they actually set up individual trays within that center that were bundles. So, okay, you're going to buy a cable, but you're probably going to buy a computer as well, and you may buy some other equipment that is associated with that. So that was the first step. So the humans would then go to those bundled sections, and it would help with quality assurance and also speed up the way that they were able to ship out products. And then the final thing was with automation, was they started to try and predict when these things would happen, and they've now put robotics within their center so that these bundles actually physically come to the guys that are going to distribute the products. So the guys don't actually now have to walk the aisles at all. Everything is robotic and actually comes to them. So they've run through a process of getting to automation. So step 5, promote and iterate. So it's all very well doing new internal technology products to try and improve productivity within your workforce, but you need to be able to measure. You need to be able to work fast and iterate, and also you need to promote internally. And that's something that we found a lot of businesses haven't necessarily done when they've set up these innovation labs. They've kept them very private, very secret, and when they've launched products, no one knows about them. Whereas if you actually promote internally and facilitate the background to why you're building this product and promote feedback within that product, you're more likely to succeed. So those are the summary of our 5 tips around moving to a startup mentality. And we think we'll see more and more companies this year introducing more of these types of initiatives. So that's number 1. Number 2 is embrace simplicity. So this is this sort of concept I'm going to split into 2. So the first one is really introducing the concept of complexity. So this is a website, and more often than not, when you're thinking about a website, there are all sorts of things that you have to think about. And often it does become quite complex because there's so many things that you need to consider. Complexity actually hinders growth. So there are statistics here from Harvard Business Review. So 86% of people believe that business processes and decision making have become so complex that it actually hinders their ability to grow. And then 49% of businesses believe that their IT systems can't respond quick enough. So things are inherently complex. And what are the damaging effects or costs of that? So 67% state that employee satisfaction is harmed if a process is complex and difficult to use. 61% believe that you actually have an increase in operational costs if a process is really difficult. And only 11% of people actually believe that their business is being innovative. So it's really important to firstly embrace simplicity from eliminating the unnecessary. So the concept here is thinking from the outset, how simple can we keep this? What problem are we trying to solve? And try and validate with your users that you're gonna solve that problem. And there's a nice quote from Blaise Pascal where he said, "If I had more time, I would have written less." And that's the concept, embracing simplicity. The other thing is around design thinking. So design thinking is not necessarily something that's new, but it's definitely a concept where people previously would have thought that design is only associated with designers. But actually design thinking is for everyone. And there's a quote, a definition from the Wikipedia. It says, "Method for practical and creative resolution of problems with the intent of an improved future result." So it's not so much the aesthetic design, it's more about creating something that will solve a problem and give some added benefit. It's a term that's coined in '69, adapted in '91, it's been here since 2010. And the way we think about it's not just a creative design, building out an experience, it's actually thinking about your users and what your users need and what your users want. It's thinking about your business strategy and what the strategic goals are for that company and what's important for that company. It's thinking about the technology, so the legacy systems that you might have, but also the future potential of that technology. And then finally, it's about the context. So it's actually the context of how someone might be using something. So they might be indoors, they might be outside, and there may be different ways that they're using that technology. So all of those things are important and contributing to design thinking. And the final point on it is bringing empathy into design. So here's an example. This is from the Exotic Marigold Hotel movie, and there's a concept around Judi Dench. So Judi Dench calls the call center, and she's really not happy. And she talks to the call center, and the call center has this script and answers Judy using the script. And because the call center representative doesn't understand that she's upset, they just repeat this process. And that results in her being very unhappy with the experience. She then later down the track, she goes to the call center and she starts to explain to the call center representative about empathy. So thinking more than just designing a process, but actually thinking, hey, because this lady is saying these certain things, maybe you need to ask more questions and start to understand and try and understand what her needs are to make her feel that you're listening to her. And so there's that concept around bringing empathy into design that's very important with design thinking. So, number 3, technology momentum. Each year we always make a call on certain new technologies, certain manufacturers that we think are on the up. So for this year, so for 2016, we think it's going to be the year of Microsoft. So although Microsoft here have clearly copycat the Apple store, they've just replaced the logo. What's the significance of Microsoft? So 18 months ago they got a new CEO, and the CEO started to change things. So traditionally Microsoft has been known to have a number of walls, and the walls were around it wasn't an open community. So for developers to unite into the code. And also when you developed, say, a mobile application or something for desktop, it was very separate. What Microsoft have done is they've now opened it up. So their whole .NET framework now is open source. Well, they've opened out to the community to say, hey, here's our code, you guys can do whatever you like with it. And what Microsoft have actually done is they've taken a step in front of Apple. So Apple still have their iOS framework, but also they have their Mac framework. So they've kept the different technologies quite different, whereas Microsoft are now totally agnostic and open. So we think there's going to be, as a big community out there, we think that Microsoft are going to have a successful year in 2016. So what's our recommendation? Our recommendation is to look to leverage a community. So rather than, if you're an IBM shop or an SAP shop, rather than think internally within the technologies that you have, look out in terms of what's being discussed about that technology and what advancements are being made in that technology. Because that more open effect, community effect, is how businesses and particularly the technology community is working. Okay, number 4, the frictionless journey. So the concept here, everyone is trying to Uberize. So what they're trying to do, a lot of businesses are trying to look at data and trying to use that data to give people a more personalized journey, a more personalized customer journey through to a path to purchase. So we've already seen in 2015 a number of examples, and we think we're going to see much more of this in 2016. So for example, Oaxaca's a restaurant chain in the UK. And what they've done is that they've opened up, so firstly you can book your food. When you arrive at the restaurant, you can book your food through a smartphone, but also you can pay, and people can share, and they can pay, and they can put tips. And you can then leave. So you don't have to go through any kind of cash register. You don't have to, technically speaking, talk to a waitress or a waiter. You can, and in what you're doing, so this is a fast food outlet, so what you're doing is you're enabling people to get in quickly and get out fast, and so allowing a more frictionless journey. Another example, Hotel Tonight, something that's getting very popular in the US. So this is where through an application you can book your hotel, you can check in through concierge, and you can actually go right to your hotel room and open up your hotel door, all through your smartphone. So you don't actually have to talk to anyone physical within a hotel. What's our recommendation? Well, we think, and if you're in this area, we think you should just look to leverage partners and the ecosystem within your path to purchase, or whatever it might be. And we think you're going to see a lot more companies introducing more frictionless journeys within their offering. So number five is focus on the big answers. So this is a play on big data. It's not really about big data because it's very difficult to make sense of big data, and we think it's about focusing on big answers. So we've seen there's a struggle, people struggle to find the answers. So 77% of retailers actually can't make sense of any data they're getting. Nearly 50% believe that their current business intelligence tools are not really doing what they should do, and only 16% feel confident that their data tools are providing them with the data that they exactly need. Now, in terms of data, it is becoming big. So an example here, in the US, 150, 200 times a day, people are picking up their mobile. So that's essentially creating mobile moments. So there's 30 billion mobile moments in the US being created daily. What we believe is that you have to ensure that you have the capabilities to make insights actionable. So it's all very well having all this data, but you need to bring a capability to start to think about how you can make whatever data it is actionable. There are all sorts of analytical companies out there, and also companies that are creating or becoming data companies. It's interesting, I had a conversation with Twitter last week. Twitter came into our office, and surprisingly, they led by talking about their data tools. And they said, you know, we're seeing trending data. We're at the forefront of lots of collating really interesting information about user behavior. And we now have 2 or 3 data tools that we want you to license. So they're all thinking about analytics, talking about creating dashboards, creating business intelligence. So what do we believe are recommendations? So firstly, identifying the data that you have, identifying the different disparate data that you have within your business. 2 is you have to create a capability, so a capability within your business, so people that are either trained up in analytical tools, even if that's Google Analytics, or people that have some expertise in data science. And then the 3rd one is the empowerment. So empowerment of within your own product development, give product owners the power to be able to value data and use data when making decisions within their business. So data-driven problem solving. Okay, number 6, the connected world solving problems. So Gartner, all sorts of companies are talking about how many things there are out there. 6.4 billion connected things in 2016 is the prediction. What we've seen in this Internet of Things world is from left to right, there's been a focus around people, so that's all around health, so, wearable technology, trying to pick up data around health and well-being, to smart vehicles, to smart homes. In 2016, we think we'll see a move to smart cities, and also starting to use technology to really problem solve within businesses and really try and improve productivity through this type of technology. There's all sorts of companies out there that are funding and putting money into this area, and really the insight for us is that there are a number of big players now playing in this market. So what we're seeing firstly is traction. So Google are investing, Apple are investing a lot. There's a lot of curiosity, so there's a lot of experimentation with this type of technology. There's a bit of trepidation. So there's a trepidation around data and the security around the data, but also trepidation in that at the moment, these aren't necessarily open source. So you're always stuck to a specific ecosystem. So if you had a particular watch, that's probably more likely to be connected to a particular smartphone. It's not open and agnostic. And the adoption we're seeing now mainly focused around people. And we're seeing lots of instances, both from a consumer and a business perspective, where that technology is being used. So 2016, we think we'll see more advancement in the technology. We think also we'll see a lot more instances where businesses are using it to solve problems. So this is an example of a US business that have introduced drones to spray pesticides. And what they've done is they've removed machinery, they've removed a lot of the insurance risk around humans, and they're now using drones to carry out these daily tasks. And then smart cities. This is an example of where businesses are introducing cloud services to help power services going forward. So an example here is actually Adelaide becoming a smart city through Telstra's Thunder product. And there's a number of telcos, but also the big players are introducing these cloud networks to help drive and encourage people to introduce connected services and Internet of Things. What's Tigerspike's view on it? Assess the business fit, see where the technology could be used. So the example of the drones, there may be some really creative ways that you can use the technology to really drive some real efficiency and productivity within your business. Okay, and the final one, our final tip is cyber security. So quite humorously, we've had cyber security for the last 3 years. So we had it in 13, 14, and 15. And I was looking back at some of our slides, and it's actually pretty much the same thing. So I've actually replicated the same slide pack that we did 3 years ago. So here's the first slide. US and Oz recorded the greatest number of compromised records. That happened in 13. It's happening now in 2015. So for example, in the US, 21.5 million social security IDs got hacked recently. And we've seen instances where a Jeep got hacked. So a connected Jeep that was people could hack in and actually start driving the car. So there's lots of instances where there's been some security breaches. 70% of CIs will not actually act until an event is triggered. So there's businesses really that's still not proactively trying to work against the security. and 80% of tech executives cannot keep up with the sophistication. And one of the really worrying things is that businesses are not necessarily investing in this technology, but the technology is not necessarily advanced enough to keep up itself. So what do we believe? Well, we believe you should set up an insurance policy as a risk mitigation strategy. So the concept here, people becoming more sophisticated, data and file transfer is your biggest risk. And so our recommendation is you do an environment audit. So you do an audit of where all your data is within your business. You do a code audit, the apps, the websites, whatever digital products you have out there. And then you introduce a BAU process. So a business as usual process where you're constantly monitoring the data and the potential areas for security risk. What's a little concerning, in 2015, $80 billion was spent on security products, and even some of the most famous security hacks of this year actually had all of the most advanced security products. And the worrying thing is these security products don't necessarily do what they say. So what's our recommendation? Our recommendation is it's not just machine. You can't just put some security code. You need to have an element of human within your de-risking policy. You need to actually now accept that everything's going to cloud and everything's now mobile. So everyone is going to cloud hosting. And you have to remember that identity is central to any security offering. That's the key piece, or the first piece that you should be focused on. So, summary of our 2016 predictions. So the 6, business adopting a startup mentality, embrace simplicity, Microsoft are on the comeback, the frictionless journey, focus on the big answers, connecting world solving problems, and finally cybersecurity. So we hope that this presentation was just a thought starter for some of you, and please talk to any of our Tigerspike team, and we're happy to help you through your sort of journey over the upcoming year as you introduce new digital products into your business or to your consumers. Thanks very much.